So I recently counted, and I've actually tried over 100 different tennis rackets in the last 5 years to try to find the perfect one for my game. Of course, I've had my favorites when I committed to the 2018 VCORE 95 and the 360 Plus Extreme Tour, and you'd think it'd be a lot easier to find rackets you actually like, but it's actually pretty hard. So since my extreme tours are getting old, it's been one of my goals for 2023 to start playing tournaments again and maybe even like win a match, something I haven't done for a very long time. So with all of that in mind, I figured it's time to start choosing a racket through a different lens. Until today, I had really been choosing my rackets based on what felt good, what gave me creativity on my forehand without sacrificing too much forgiveness. But when I watch these next-gen players like Alcaraz, Rune, Fritz, and Wu, my eyes boggle at their lighter racket setups. So these days I found myself looking for something lighter, stiffer, and generally more forgiving. But that's harder than you might think. I'm looking for something that actually generates power through a more efficient beam design rather than just defaulting to a higher swing weight, which is what I had been doing before. So through this new criteria, I'm at a crossroads between two rackets that I absolutely love, the VCORE 98 and the Radical MP. But the weird thing is, in some ways these feel like completely different rackets, like opposites if you will. The Radical has a very stiff feel and a super tight 16x19 string pattern. It just begs you to string looser, leading me to find a more powerful string setup than the Tour Sniper that I had settled on before. On the other hand, the VCORE has a very finicky string bed. It's very open, especially towards the top of the hoop in the hitting zone, and it just chews through strings because of it. I find myself breaking strings in under 5 hours with that racket, which is pretty crazy. I definitely haven't broken strings that fast with any other racket. And even though these near stock setups are gathering a ton of steam on the professional tour, I was really struggling to find my groove with a lighter spec. With this stock 2023 VCORE 98, I really had to just swing out of my shoes if I wanted any court penetration. And of course this worked amazingly well when I was feeling good. But how often do you even have those good days on the tennis court? Well, for me, it's like almost never. But then when I looked at how I was playing with the Auxetic Radical, it was way more consistent, even in stock form. But with that racket, there were two things that I found really off-putting. The first is sound, and I'm not sure if it's actually due to the sound grommets that Head says they've implemented in that racket, but this racket is super loud when you hit it. It's not just loud, but it's also really high-pitched, almost badminton-like, and be sure to note that I say that with the utmost and maximum disgust and displeasure. I just hate how this thing sounds when you hit it. So I started adding weight to both the VCORE 98 and the Radical MP to see if that would change things. I tried a ton of different setups with the VCORE 98 and almost nothing worked, which was really disappointing. For some reason, I lost a lot of my, well, what I'm calling tip awareness whenever I customized this racket, which just ruined my timing, making me feel both late and early at all times, which seems impossible, but basically it just means you suck. Which, you know, that sucks. I'm not gonna go through every single racket setup I tried here, but if you are a super nerd and you do want to see everything that I've tried, I will link an article to my website in the description so you can check out the nitty-gritty there. And at this point, I was about to completely give up on the VCORE when Brando, a user from Talk Tennis Warehouse forums, reached out to me with what might have been the perfect racket setup. You see, Brando has been working on a theory which correlates a player's height, or more specifically, arm length, to a given recoil weight. This is very similar to Traveler Jam or Traveler AJM, depending on your dyslexia's theory on MGRI, optimizing MGRI to 21. However, It's more specific about how much weight you're actually dealing with, whereas MGRI is weight agnostic. You see, you can add weight to increase MGRI, however, you can also add weight to decrease MGRI, which is weird. But with recoil weight, anytime that you want to add weight, you increase your recoil weight, unless you're adding weight exactly to the balance point, which is basically impossible because it's like a minuscule point. Okay, we're just talking about minuscule differences at this point, which is ridiculous, but I assume you get the point of the balance point. Anyway, so I leaded up my VCORE 98 to what I'm calling the Brando spec, and my world was totally rocked. I really jived with this racket as long as it had fresh strings. Now that is absolutely key. With this setup, I generated just enough spin to keep the ball dipping down just before it hit the baseline. And added bonus, my two-handed backhand just became this impenetrable wall. Sadly, the open string pattern was the single limiting factor with this racket. Even going to a 16 gauge string did not yield enough durability, as severe notching occurred within 2 hours of hitting, sufficiently reducing spin just so that I was losing control and I would start regularly missing long. Now, if I was anything other than a racket reviewer, I might have honestly stuck with this setup and tried to find a 1.35mm string to go with. But I feel like I really need a racket that I can test normal gauge strings with so I can continue to make string reviews, making the VCORE 98 a fruitless option. Not to mention, there's no way I really want to string that racket every 1 or 2 times I play with it if I'm going to be notching the strings so badly. So back to the Radical MP we go. I opted to do my own form of racket customization to the Radical MP rather than following Brando's formula. Note that Brando's formula for now is still secret. He's working on like a pretty substantial publication that he's going to post in time, so just stay tuned for that. And yes, we are going to discuss that in depth on this channel when it's released, and there's going to be awesome collaboration with Brando at that time, but we'll just leave that for later. So anyway, the reason that I did my own customization was I found that the weight in the butt cap made the racket feel just a little bit slower through the air rather than placing the weight at 7 inches, which interestingly is a concept that was really initially developed by this Traveler AJM character on the forums. For me, high racket head speeds are absolutely critical if I'm going to be confident in my forehand, but really it's more than just racket head speed that I need. For me, the key thing is what I'm calling tip awareness. Now, I know this sounds like a dick joke, but I promise you it's not supposed to be, it just happened to be. Good luck. It's the TennCom curse. So one thing that I always loved about both my Extremes and VCORE 95s was this feeling where I could really feel the weight in the tip of the frame in relation to my swing. This tip awareness is absolutely crucial for feeling the checkpoints through my forehand stroke. As I swing the racket, I can clear each checkpoint through the stroke and make both conscious and unconscious adjustments to the angle of my racket face as I'm swinging. For me, there are very few rackets in the entire world which offer enough tip awareness for me to control the angle of my racket face so diligently. These rackets include the Aero Pro Drive Original, the Liquid Metal Radical MP, the 360 Plus Extreme Tour, as well as the SV and 2018 VCORE 95s. I have not tried any other rackets that give me that kind of control. I was trying to explain this sensation to Brando in what would end up being more than a 90-minute Zoom call, as I felt that his weight setups didn't give me this tip awareness that I so desperately needed. And I admit part of this could definitely be because I've been trying so many different rackets in the last few months. And he did agree with that last bit. However, he also added he sometimes notices a bit of a hitch on my forehand side, which could be alleviated by taking my racket all the way back with both hands instead of just this lazy thing. And of course, My internal self rolled its eyes because I've heard my dad say that to me like a million different times. The problem was the Radical MP just would not jive with this adapted swing path. My guess, although I'm not sure, is that the twist weight is a little bit too high for me to really adjust the angle of the racket face with enough speed and precision during my swing, but I'm honestly not really sure why, and I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments if you have any ideas on what this key tip awareness metric could even be. So with the Radical, I found myself just playing so much lower margin tennis than I really needed to, and definitely much lower margin if I expected myself to win any matches. I was hitting it too low over the net, I was hitting it too flat, and I was spraying and praying way too much. I was really beginning to lose hope, and with only 2 weeks left before my first tournament of the season, I just didn't know what to do. But thankfully, I had 2 rackets left to test. One, the Auxetic Gravity Pro, which at the time was waiting for me at the post office, and 2, the Slinko Whiteouts back there, which I'd just been neglecting on that back shelf, letting them collect dust because I wasn't super interested in them, to be honest. So I figured that the Auxetic Gravity Pro would be a pretty incremental update. I doubted that I would really find that much more maneuverability with the Auxetic version, so I just strung up the 18x20 whiteout at 48 pounds with one of my favorite tennis strings of all time, Grapplesnake Tour Sniper. Link in the description, 10% off if you want to try it on your first order. So with little hope in my heart, I hit the courts, and I found something that I was not expecting. Near perfection. In stock form, no less. This racket absolutely flies through the contact zone. The tip awareness is like second to none, especially in stock form, and the feel and dwell time is sweeter and juicier than even my Head Extreme Tours. My spin with this frame is absolutely off the chain, and when I take that racket back with both hands, I'm finding so much additional wrist leg that my forehand felt absolutely invincible. But looking at the specs of the whiteout, it's really hard to see why I would like it, but I don't care. This is the racket that I want to pick up when I go play tennis. And at this point in time, I have absolutely no idea what technical details make this frame so amazing for my game. But when I heard that the tennis mastermind Roman Prokes was a key contributor to the development of this frame, if you didn't know, he's the guy who customized Djokovic's rackets. He also helped a lot with Agassi. I just knew that there was something special to this racket. So stay tuned for my full and complete review of the 18x20 Slinko Whiteout, as well as much information on the development of that racket that I can scrape the internet to find. Let me know if you've got any questions